Hi, it's Louise at Spiral Bright Insight. I'm a galactic and intuitive astrologer, and I'm here to do an energy check-in and just talk about some of the astrology that we are going to be working with in the week ahead. So we'll start with the energy check-in, and if you are new to my channel, I tend to do these sorts of videos as and when I feel called to do, in addition to presenting some content about the full moons and the new moons and also key astrological events. So if you're new, welcome. If you are returning, it's thank you for returning and watching my content. It's really appreciated. And in terms of where we are at energetically, it's really difficult to put it into words right now. Although Neptune has moved into Aries and we are working with the Sun in Aries, there is still a huge amount of presence and activation in the late degrees of Pisces. And when we're working with Pisces, there is no definition, there is no structure, there is no form, there is no container, there are no rules. Everything is really kind of just blending or merging or dissolving into all that is. And, you've got to bear in mind, we have got Mercury retrograde today. I'm recording this on Sunday, the 6th of April. So Mercury retrograde in Pisces, we have Saturn in Pisces, Venus retrograde in Pisces, North Node in Pisces. So there is a lot of focus on this final, sort of the final decan of all of the chart, between 25 and 29 or 25 and 27 degrees Pisces at the moment. So a huge amount of focus on this part of the chart. And with that comes this sense of there are no boundaries, but there's also no barriers. We are in a time of flux and it is very unstable. There feels like there's nothing to hold on to. There is very little that is tangible. Although Neptune is now in Aries and will stay there until October, Neptune at 0 degrees of Aries is kind of undefined as well. The 0 point is the point of new beginnings, but also all that is. So there is, Neptune hasn't quite established itself, hasn't really started working with the Aries energy properly. So Neptune dissolves as well. So, if you're kind of going from sort of feeling one way 1 minute to feeling another way, completely other way the next, then you're pretty much in tune with what is going on. I mean, for me, towards the end of last week, I was actually going to come on and do a check-in video on Friday, but I felt like I had been hit by a bus. The fatigue was next level. And I also had this kind of sense, which is very unusual for me, because if you've been sort of following my channel or you've worked with me, for a while, this is my passion. I absolutely love showing up and sharing this content, and I find it very hard to switch off. I'm completely motivated. But I was just getting the sense of, I just can't be bothered. I know I've got something to say, but I just cannot be bothered. And that is not kind of my standard operating procedure in any way. But it was interesting because instead of sort of, thinking, oh God, but I just allowed that to be the case. And I just said to myself, it's okay. If if you're not feeling it, it's fine not to show up and do, it's fine not to show up on this occasion. Just take a break. That is okay. And it's okay to feel tired. And I think, what we often don't really give ourselves credit for is the amount of light and the amount of high frequency energy that is coming in to our planet at the moment, which is hitting our bodies, and our bodies are having to process it. Our bodies are having to navigate this new energy, and it's not something that we've ever really encountered before. So there is an element of hard work, an element of a lot of effort is required at a very physical level at this time. So if you are feeling exhausted, if you are feeling drained, or if you are just feeling like actually you've just had enough and you just want to give up, then I would say honor that. And the message that was coming through as I was thinking about what I was going to talk about in this video is that we are in this time, particularly as Mars is in Cancer. Mars is trine Saturn today. Mars is also trine Venus, and in a slightly wider trine, but still very tight with Mercury retrograde, with the North Node. this is about emotions. Mars in Cancer is about emotional intelligence, about really being able to connect deep within and really explore how we are feeling and to honor that. So if there are sort of strange emotions coming up, or you feel like you're on kind of like a roller coaster, or out at sea and things are constantly changing and shifting, then it is time to honor that, to respect it, and to really just tune in and say, okay, that's how I'm feeling. This is a transit. Everything is transitory. I'm not going to feel this way maybe in a few hours or tomorrow or next week. This is all very temporary, but I respect where I am and how I'm feeling at this time. And it's okay, because I think, we have been really brought up, programmed, conditioned to feel that certain emotions are fine. Actually, it's fine to feel happy and joyful and fulfilled and excited. But if we start to move into the feeling despair or anger, or I don't know, any of the more negative emotions, we will instantly jump into self-judgment, and we start to tell ourselves that there's something wrong with us. We shouldn't be feeling like that. And that is really quite dangerous and negative state to be in, because actually all emotions are valid, and it's okay to feel angry and anger, as long as you don't step into violent and aggressive type behavior off the back of it. It's okay to feel despair, like you've just had enough, as long as you honor that, you notice it, you acknowledge it, and you sort of trust that it is just a passing transitory state. It's not going to be there forever, and it's something that you can shift out of. So that's the first sort of that's the first thing I wanted to say. Wherever you are right now, whatever is coming up for you right now, just honor it and give yourself permission to feel that way. Obviously, if you're in a state of complete despair and depression and it's been ongoing, that's different. You need to go and reach out and get support, but it is okay to feel like that for a short amount of time. And, we shouldn't jump into self-judgment or judgment of others, which is equally, which can often be the case as well. It's about saying, okay, this is how I feel right now, and that's okay. So if you feel like you just had enough and you can't be bothered, take a break. Often our bodies will find ways of giving messages to us that perhaps we're not listening to in other ways, from other respects. So this is about just saying, okay, it's all right. I feel tired. That's okay. I'm going to take a break. I can't be bothered. That's okay. I'm just going to take the pressure off myself. And, see how that feels, because sometimes that's what we need. So it also comes back to being able to hold space for others, because if we are giving too much, if we're sort of over, the cup is overflowing and and everything's leaking out in all directions, we cannot hold the space properly for others, and by over giving, we're almost doing people a disservice. So again, it is about coming back to the self, making sure that your needs are met, that your emotions are being honored, that you are respecting yourself, your time, your energy, and how you're feeling. Because this ultimately, with Mars in Cancer, and Mars has been in Cancer for a long time, and this is about emotional intelligence and being able to really get to grips with your emotions. So we've got that going on. Tomorrow, the 7th of April, Mercury is going to station direct. Now, this is going to be quite a significant shift. However, Mercury is in Pisces. He's going to station direct at 26 degrees of Pisces, very close to the North Node, who he met while he was retrograde a couple of days ago. So, this is a shift. We're coming to the end of the retrograde period. Things are going to start moving forward. Mercury has obviously got all the information that he was sort of set out to get hold of and to collect and to retrieve during his retrograde. And now he's ready to move forward. But because Mercury is still going to be in Pisces until I think it's the 16th of April. So we've still got, this Mercury is going to work through those final degrees again in forward motion. Things are still not clear. So again, don't beat yourself up if you still don't really know what's going on, if you can't put your finger on how you feel, if you can't get clarity, if you can't, define anything. Just allow, these energies to just do what they need to do, be in the flux, be in the flow, be in the nothingness if that's what it takes, be in the void, because it is from that space that the new is being created. And sometimes, all the lights have to go out so that the darkness can create the new life, can give birth to what is coming next. And, you just can't see what is going on, but there is this inner faith and this inner trust that what is coming is going to be next level. And it feels that that is very much where we are at now. So as Mercury stations direct, very close to the North Node, there is information that Mercury has now got that he needs and that we need to be able to move on to the next level. Obviously, North Node is about our soul evolution, our soul growth, where we are heading next. So Mercury's retrieved something, a fact, a piece of information, a new level of understanding. Maybe it's a new belief, maybe it's a new level of insight, but he's retrieved something and he's now going to go forward again and move through the end of Pisces into Aries and carry on his journey around the wheel. So there may be 7th of April, there may be something that comes to light with this station that is perhaps surprising. It could trigger a wave of compassion because Pisces is the water sign. It will trigger compassion, it will trigger emotion, it will trigger flow, but it can also create illusion because there are blurred lines. There is no definition. So again, I would say that if there is stuff coming to light, there are new facts, new pieces of information, don't take it all at face value. Just allow things to be the observer. Don't get sucked into any drama or any opinions or any sides or any division. Just, stay from that higher perspective. Try and see things from a unified sort of unity consciousness perspective and just allow things to flow, because we are in a very, very shifting landscape at this time and things are not being fixed and set for a while yet. So as Mercury stations direct next to the North Node, he is in a sextile to Uranus in Taurus and in a trine to Mars in Cancer. Now, I was going to talk about this aspect on Friday. This was what I kind of came on to talk about, or planned to, intended to, and it just didn't happen. So, but it is still applicable now and has been over the weekend and will be for the days to come. So I want to talk about it. And with this with Uranus at the top, sextile Mars, sextile Venus, Mercury, Saturn and the North Node, because they're all together in this Pisces cluster, we have a grand minor trine. And it means that the top of the grand minor trine is Uranus, which is our planet of chaos, but also our planet of awakening, of shaking things up in order that we can wake up, we can reach a new level of consciousness and awareness. And, with Uranus in Taurus, we've talked about this at length because Uranus's transit in Taurus has been it has been lengthy. This is about shaking us up from our very core. This is a physical shake up, a physical wake up. So Uranus has the support of the Pisces cluster, particularly strengthened by the fact that Mercury stationing direct in sextile to Uranus, supported by Mars in Cancer. So this is something we have to really work through at a very emotional level, really understand about how we feel about things. And also with Mars in Cancer, this is about connecting to our roots, to our foundation, to our inner core, our inner light. Ancestral energies step forward when Mars is in Cancer. And also it's important that we have a safe space, that we are creating a sanctuary and a protected space for ourselves as we try and negotiate all the change and and the awakening energies that are coming through Uranus in Taurus. And of course, we have this grand minor trine, but at the bottom, which creates a kite, if we look at Scorpio, which is opposing Uranus in Taurus, in terms of traditional astrology, there is no kite, but when we add in a fixed star, Hadar, which is Beta Centauri, it creates this most beautiful kite. So a kite aspect in astrology is when we have two trines. So the Pisces cluster and Mars in Cancer are all in trine to Hadar and Scorpio. And then we have 2 sextiles at the top, so, and the opposition. And a kite really creates the energy of flight, of rising up, of soaring, of being able to lift out of whatever it is, wherever you are at, and being able to see the bigger picture. It lends almost also this lightness energy. So again, if you think about how a kite moves when it's caught on the wind, it darts here, there, and everywhere, but they can be really mesmerizing to watch if you get that current right and you're able to take advantage of the air and the energy that is moving and dictating the kite's patterns. So with Hadar at the bottom opposing Uranus, yes, there are changes going on. That is sort of, without question. And they are very physical because Uranus is in Taurus. So this is affecting our resources, our physical experience, our sensual experience. So the way we experience through our senses. Also our resources, our finances are also being affected. Everything is being shaken up with the goal of creating this awakening for so many of us. But we have Hadar and Beta Centauri holding space. Hadar in this kite is the anchor, and it is also the launch pad. And when we think about Hadar, this is a planet or a fixed star that represents unconditional love. It represents unconditional love, collaboration, unity, coming together, cooperation, being very, very in tune with and connected to nature. And really, when we're working with Hadar, there is no separation, there is no competition, there is no anger, no greed, no violence, no aggression, no fear. This is just a state of pure unconditional love and a connection to the land and to all living beings. So this energy is supporting this kite, and it is that which we are being encouraged to move into in order to create this liftoff, which will come through the Uranus in Taurus at the tip of the kite, supported by all the planets in Pisces who, have been working on a more spiritual approach, working on unity consciousness, working on having compassion, working on surrender and being able to let go of the 3D and the attachment, supported also by Mars in Cancer, which is really about that emotional intelligence. So the kite is really beautiful. And I think, that is kind of almost a message of hope, a reminder that, when things are crumbling and things are falling apart and everything seems so unstable and chaotic and there's so much discord going on, we have these beautiful Hadarian energies just holding space for us, helping us to sort of see the bigger picture and bringing us back to that unconditional love. And Hadar is creating this beautiful stabilizing force, holding space while Uranus shakes things. Now, I'm going to talk about what we have coming up this week. But before I go any further, I just want to highlight the fact that we are working with Gene Key 51. The Sun is transiting Gate 51 in human design and Gene Key 51. So this is really interesting. And again, there are no coincidences when it comes to the energies and what's happening and the synergy and how everything weaves together. So on the day that Mercury stations direct, we will be in Gate 51.3. So the Sun spends 6 days in each gate or working with each gene key, and 51 is it's the gene key of awakening, or the path of awakening. That's the Siddhi, and that's effectively where we are aiming for as a collective. However, the shadow is agitation. And this can also be interpreted as shock. So it is possible, particularly with Mercury stationing direct during this time, very close to the North Node and also very close to Saturn, which was all about lessons, North Node about our collective growth and our collective purpose and our collective evolution. With this agitation, there is possibly going to be something that happens within the coming days that creates a lot of turmoil, that creates some fear, that releases a lot or creates a lot of anxiety, restlessness, fear, and a lack of trust. And again, we kind of interpret these energies. We never know exactly how they are going to show up, but that is kind of the backdrop backdrop of the shadow of this gate or the shadow of this gene key. The gift that we are hopefully going to be working with as well is the ability to be proactive and to see any turmoil or any shock or any agitation or any sort of curveball, plot twist, thunderbolt as an opportunity to grow and to see a bigger picture, to have a different perspective, to see it as an opportunity and to face fears head on, which obviously comes from a much more enlightened place. But the universe will always deliver the opportunity in a way that will always deliver the opportunities to grow. You know, from a human perspective, it can feel like our world is falling apart, or that, you know, everything's going wrong, everything is against us. But if we're able to rise up and see that actually our higher self has engineered this, created this, designed it so that we can use that opportunity to grow, then that shifts the perspective completely, and it can really help sort of navigate whatever is coming up. Now, the Siddhi is awakening, so this creates a permanent shift in consciousness, helps us much more to be in tune with our intuition, to have compassion, which is, of course, you know, the big theme of the Pisces cluster, having compassion, being much more in tune with our feelings, with what's going on, with that higher self, that bigger picture, that unified field, all that is. So the fact that the sun is moving through this gate and or working with this gene key this week in particular feels very, very permanent and very pertinent. Yeah, we could be in store for some surprises, from some shocks, some turmoil, but it is all designed to awaken us to a bigger picture and see things from a different perspective. So often, I've talked about this a lot, often, you know, we can get very stuck in our ways, we can sit in our comfort zones, and it's not until something comes along to really shake things up that we actually think, oh crikey, you know, I didn't see that, it was there all along, but I just was completely closed off to it, and now I can see it clear as day. So again, the potential for quite a turbulent week potentially, if we kind of think about it from the perspective of the gene key. But, you know, we are also in the final sort of days of eclipse season, because at the end of the week, we're going to have our full moon in Libra. So, and we have had a really quite intense 6 weeks. So we're kind of building up. This is the final throes of that eclipse energy, working towards the full moon in Libra, which is actually either on the 12th or the 13th, depending where you are in the world. So as we move through the week, we are going to have, obviously, Mercury stations direct on Monday. Tuesday the 8th, the sun is conjunct fixed star Tau Ceti. Now, this is a star in the Cetus constellation. And if we think about Tau Ceti, the sun is in Aries. So this is very much sort of tapping into that inner warrior energy. And a lot of the archetype and the energies associated with Tau Ceti are about being sovereign, taking control, sort of stepping into that warrior, standing up for what is wrong. But there is also this other beautiful energy that weaves through with Tau Ceti that is linked to artistry, to creativity, to beauty, to having a connection with nature, to understanding that our ability to create is actually divine, and helping us to really step into that understanding that we are all connected, that all living beings have this flow, this sort of, even if we can't see that we are connected, there is this undeniable truth that actually we are. And in many ways, we are like the trees who have this network of roots in the mycelium. As humans, we also are in tune with that, even if we have sort of disconnected or been separated from that truth. So Tau Ceti helps us potentially to remember that. And remember, we've still got this Pisces energy, which is also promoting that truth. The sun, when it meets a fixed star, creates this huge spotlight, this huge focus. It lights up the fixed star, the themes and the archetypes, so that we can really start to work with them. And with Cetus, Tau Ceti, we also have the imagery of the whale. So, you know, this beautiful, majestic creature who is very in tune with the environment, can pick up sort of sounds and vibrations, you know, has this sonar intelligence to be able to hear frequencies and to communicate with other beings in the depths of the ocean. There is also this beautiful connection with the whale, with the womb and that womb space. And again, coming back to sometimes we have to go into the dark, sometimes we have to spend time where we just don't know, we can't see, the lights go out, there is no direction, there's no guiding star, there's no kind of definition or rule book. It's almost like everything has to go into this dark space so that we can create something. And when I talk about Tau Ceti in my reports, I always refer to the Bible story and Jonah being swallowed by the whale, and how that for him was a rite of passage, because when he was sort of spat out by the whale at the end of that period, he had transformed. And it feels like, we have been in that womb space, in that cave, that inside of the whale, in the depths of the ocean, as we've had all this Pisces energy to navigate, and we have been transformed as part of that process. So we don't yet know what we're going to look like, or how we're going to feel, or how we're going to show up, at the end of this process. But it is acknowledging that actually that is what has been going on. So the Sun conjunct Tau Ceti is really drawing focus to those themes. And as we move through the week towards the full moon, the North Node, Mercury direct, is going to meet with the North Node again, this time in direct motion on the 11th, creating a repeating square with the galactic center. So Mercury is checking in with the North Node, making sure he knows everything that is required in order to step us on to the next stage of our evolution. But with the square to the galactic center, this time it is non-negotiable. We have to bring in that cosmic energy, that galactic energy, that connection to the center of our universe, those higher light codes, those higher frequencies. This is not, it's no longer an option. It's something that we just have to incorporate and weave into where we are going next. And that includes our understanding, that includes our mindset, that includes the information. And the information comes through the light codes, it comes through the solar flares that are hammering our planet almost, incessantly. I think Saturday, the Schumann resonance reached 92, which is flipping high. So, we are literally been bombarded by these beautiful higher cosmic frequencies that are designed to shift us, to force us to ascend. And with the square to Mercury and the North Node, again, it is non-negotiable. We have to work with those. We can't ignore them. So that's happening on the 11th. Then as we move towards the end of the week, the Sun is going to meet with Chiron. So the Sun is going to shine a really bright spotlight on, light up the wound, whatever the wound is that relates to our identity, about our understanding and of who we are, of our identity in Aries, of the self. Sun is going to shine a light on that. So we're maybe going to be able to see something that we didn't see before, but we're also going to understand what we need to do to heal that wound. And remember, with Chiron, we're never fixing anything. We're never making anything go away. We are working with the wound, using the sacred knowledge and the sacred wisdom that is presented through the wound to help us step into the healing, to the healer that we are designed and meant to be. So we may be able to, may have a new understanding of who we are, what wound we've been carrying, perhaps for lifetimes, for eons. Again, anything is possible, but we're also going to have a much clearer idea and understanding of how and what we need in order to heal that wound, to be able to move forward and to step into a higher version of ourselves. And this that conjunction is going to be conjunct a fixed star called Acamar, which is in the Eridanus constellation. And it is believed, at the research I've done, that Acamar was always thought to be at the end of the Eridanus constellation, the Eridanus being the river, until Acamar was discovered and was sort of grouped into the Eridanus constellation. So with Acamar, we kind of have this energy. We're very much tuning into the symbolism and the archetype of the river as a spiritual journey, being able to, I've talked about this before, follow the path of the river as it bends, as it winds. It's very much dictated by its physical environment, the banks of the river. Some parts of the river go really fast, others just trickle along. So there's lots of speed, sort of differences in terrain and direction, but it will always move in one way. There is always forward movement with the river, and we're reminded of how our spiritual journey is, that we might sort of go off course, but we're always going to come back. And at the end, when we get to the end of the river, to the end of the journey, we sort of come to the river mouth and we move into the ocean, which is the metaphor for all that is, that soul space. We sort of release, we kind of finish one part of our spiritual journey and we move into this bigger sort of way of being. And what is interesting with Acamar, because Acamar is no longer at the end of the river, it is, for me, it is a reminder that actually we are so close, and just to keep going, have faith, trust that actually, the soul knows, the higher self knows exactly where we're heading, knows what the destination is, knows where we're all meant to end up. But it is about taking stock of the journey and understanding that that is the goal. It is the experience of the journey, not the destination, that we needed to focus on. So we might have thought, in a previous time when Acamar marked the end of the Eridanus constellation, that we'd sort of hit gold and that was it, we'd made it, but actually it's like not quite, we've still got a little way to go. But there is also that trust that it is about making the most of the trials, the tribulations, the challenges, the gifts that come along the way. And then I'm going to do a separate video about the full moon in Libra, because there's some really beautiful energies to talk about, but I think it's really very beautiful how we end this eclipse season with this full moon in Libra, just as the sun is conjunct Aries, which is opposite, just as we have these beautiful star energies as well, and there are more to bring in, but Arcturus in particular is very, very active at this full moon, because Arcturus and Speaker are both conjunct the full moon in Libra. So there is this beautiful energy coming through of peace, of balance, of harmony, of equality, of equilibrium, which we kind of need after such a turmoil-filled sort of 6-week period with all the crazy energies that we've been dealing with. And what is even more beautiful is the full moon is at 1:22 a.m. in the UK on the 13th. At 2:02, so 40 minutes later, Venus, who has been in retrograde for 40 days and 40 nights, so just note the sort of the synergy here with the number 40, Venus stations direct. So Venus is the ruling planet of this moon, so it is very strong Venus energy. And again, I'm going to go into more detail when I do a separate video about this, but it's just so beautiful, and it feels like we're going to have this pause and this opportunity just to go just sit in this frequency, this energy of balance and peace and harmony. Yes, the sun is going to shine a huge light on where we might be out of harmony and out of balance, and where we might not have peace in our life, but it's also going to give us the opportunity to work with and invite in and sort of navigate that beautiful energy as well. And of course, Arcturians are all to do with quantum emotional healing. So this is just stunning. At the end of what is potentially quite a jittery week, and again, I'm not going to prophesize or, create any fear-mongering at all, but I think it's always useful to be aware of and prepared for something, rather than being completely blind and then sort of having the rug pulled out from underneath of you and you just think, what on earth happened? So, yes, we're still kind of in this energy of flux, but also illusion, blurred lines, foggy energy. So bear that in mind. If things are coming to light, if there are shocks and surprises, again, try and see it from a higher perspective and don't get sucked in. Don't necessarily buy into what is being shown or what is being told, because there is just this really blurry, dreamy energy, which is still going to be there for a while. But certainly once Venus is direct, just 40 minutes after the full moon, there will be another shift. So again, that is for next week. I'm sure there will be more to say about that as well. But yeah, Mercury direct we're going to feel that shift for sure. But again, there's still that sort of lack of clarity, so don't expect to get all the answers straight away. And then with the extra sort of energy of gate 51 or gene key 51, I think we could be in for some surprises, some awakening through shock, a plot twist, who knows. But again, it is useful to kind of, but as always, and I think I try and say this as often as I can, these are transit. So if there are challenging energies, it is not going to be permanent. Things do pass, the wheel keeps turning, the energy shifts. So just kind of stay with it if things are getting a little bit hot to handle. Be mindful and respect and acknowledge how you're feeling. That's come through really, really strongly. And, again, just trust it is a transit. It is transient. It is not permanent. So, everything can shift. And if things are shifting really quickly, again, just go with it and try not to get too attached to one state, knowing that it's going to perhaps be different in a few minutes or a few hours or a few days, whatever that is. And try wherever possible to work with that kite energy, allow yourself to rise up to see the bigger picture. And I think, I was sort of thinking earlier about what I was going to include in this video. And, my experience is that on this journey of awakening, of growth, of sort of opening to high levels of consciousness, it was almost as if we pick it was almost like a fast track in some ways, fast track lifetime, because the soul knows that there is so much that it needs to achieve, so much growth has to happen, so much awareness, so much awakening, and therefore there will be lots and lots and lots of opportunities for us at a human level to work with that growth, to kind of move through challenges in order to experience this expansion. So, and if you're in a phase of sort of really high level upgrades and sort of growth, then it's likely that you're going to have more challenges coming straight to your door, because from a higher self perspective and from a soul perspective, there is no judgment. So your soul and your higher self kind of know that, okay, she needs or he needs this experience in order to learn this. So you need to go through X to be able to learn Y, and that is the path to expansion and to higher awareness. So if there are people coming in that are triggering you, or that are sort of bringing, making you sort of almost revisit, or have to look in depth at certain aspects of yourself, or the way you're behaving, the way you're reacting, how you're dealing with things, it's not easy to do this, but try and see where the potential and the opportunity is, rather than the challenge and the block and the resistance. And the more resistance you feel, and the more challenge and the more triggered you feel, try and see it as the bigger opportunity to grow, to expand, to evolve. Now, that is not easy to do, when you're coming at it from a 3D and you're completely entrenched in all the emotions and the drama. But if you can see it from a higher perspective, you might be able to see where the lesson is, and how you, higher self, has invited these sort of situations in, and it's almost always through other people to trigger you, but to trigger you so that you respond and that you can sort of work through what it is that you're here to work with. And they will just keep on coming. We don't ever kind of get to the end of the list, or that's certainly been my experience up until now. So again, it may sound easier said than done, but it was coming through very clearly to me as something to share. So I hope that's helpful for some of you. And, for me, I get triggered all the time and it can often take me days to realise actually what's going on. But, that is part of the waking to higher consciousness. It's being able to see things from that bird's eye view, from that higher perspective, and to see the challenges, the blocks and the triggers as the opportunity rather than restriction. So I'm going to leave it there. Please keep an eye on my channel, because there will be a full moon in Libra video to follow, probably later on in the week. And as always, please like the video, and if you want to share, or you have got something's occurred to you, some amazing insight, or you've resonated with what I've said, it's really, really lovely for me to read the comments, and I think other people really appreciate that as well. Certainly when I'm looking at a video on YouTube, I often go to the comments before I even listen to the content to see kind of what people are saying. So I really appreciate anyone who takes the time to comment. I try and reply, not necessarily straight away, but I do try and reply wherever I can. And share the video, oh, and also, the comments also help the algorithm, so they help the video to be shown to more people as well. So really appreciate that. And if you are not yet signed up to my mailing list, please do so. My website is spiralbright.co.uk. You can sign up at the bottom of each page. There is a sign up form, and then you'll be added to my mailing list, and you will receive my mail shots as and when they come out. Not that often, but as and when I've got something to say, and I've got my monthly newsletter as well. So I'm going to leave it there. Have an amazing week. Keep sort of, swimming in those currents, and just, stay in flux, I would say, is the message, and be kind to yourself. All right. Thanks so much.